Before I go into showing you how to create components out of the different planters here, um, let me show you how to do a little bit of topography on the edges, and it's exactly like I just showed you with a couple different tools and at a larger scale. So on this side, I will do something very simple here, and it'll just be kind of a flat area like this with a little bit of an arc here. So nothing too fancy, but just so you can see what that looks like. I've got those 4 edges selected, hit the sandbox tool again, and looks about like that. Not so bad. On this side, I'll make it a little bit more detailed using the arc tool. So the arc tool is really neat because it draws tangent points when you start from the end of an existing arc. So notice how that curve there is showing me that it's tangent. Oh, I must have a line floating in there. Why that filled in. From that point, this one won't work because of that line. Let's get rid of it. Oh, that must have been a remnant line from the image. So you don't have to do everything completely straight in SketchUp. And for this one, instead of doing a curved edge along this vertical wall, I'll just do 2 straight lines. This is a little experimental, so I don't know if this will quite work, but select tool and very carefully grab all of my edges. There we go. And hit from contours. So whenever you've got an area that kind of bends in like this one, you'll get excess geometries. And a really easy way to clean that up is to edit the component by double clicking and then turn on your hidden geometry. And we can see all of this extra junk in here. So I'll take the eraser tool and click and drag very slowly. And if you're picky like me, you'll probably jump in here and get rid of those as well. Oops, a little bit too much erasing. That's alright. Let's just heal that surface by connecting that line there. So there we go. Fairly believable organic edge. Let's turn off hidden geometries. And textures, if you wanted to paint this as a grass texture, there is a vegetation setting in your materials, and these are okay. They're not super nice, but we kind of run into that same thing as before. Grass, it doesn't really matter. You can't really pick up on kind of that broken glass effect, so that's actually not too terribly bad. Over here you can start to see it, but if you ever want it to be truly projected, you'd want to first apply it to something outside of that image, like this surface that I just drew. Let's use that one. Then right click, then make sure it's projected. Then you'd want to sample it. Now on Windows, you've also got the sample tool living over here on your material browser. So alternatively, you can grab that and then edit this surface or this component and apply. So it seems like a lot of steps, but it's not too bad. But since we're on the topic of textures, let's revisit importing an image, or importing an image file as a texture. So I've got a little box here, and for the sole purpose of something to apply to, I'll go to File, Import. Now in the Images folder from the files available on Blackboard, there's one here called Grass Golf JPEG, and it's just got a little crisscross pattern. But this one, when you use it as a texture, and it will repeat based off of its first input. So if I click right here, that will be the size of my repeating texture. So I'm going to make it about that big. And notice that that square is now repeating. If I right click on that and go to texture and then position, you can see the size of that image. The size of the actual image will be in between your 4 push pins. So I won't get too much into the push pins right now, but it kind of gives a nice little effect. Let's go ahead and sample that. Oops, and I forgot a step. Right click, make sure it is projected. Just trust me, it won't work quite right if you don't do that. Then sample it. Then edit your component that you'd like to put it inside of and apply. So someone is being very anal with the lawnmower on that side. Let's do it on this side too. Oh, and same thing as the other side. We've got some extra geometries, and I've mentioned that Z fighting before, so let's fix that. And if you ever don't want these to be components anymore, all you have to do is right click and select explode. So I generally tell people that you should kind of keep things in components, but you know, if it's a real simple model, it might be a little bit easier, especially when you're learning the ins and outs of SketchUp, to go ahead and explode those. So I will turn off hidden geometry and get rid of those guys. Alright, so now finally on to the review of where we were in class, and it was turning these into components. So all I did was select, or drew a box around that free form geometry, and with it selected, the surface and the edges, I will make that a component. Good idea to name these two. Otherwise you'll end up with a lot of components. Now, and I forgot a step. Right click, make component. This one, very important. If it has shared geometries, you know, this edge is shared with you know, that surface, by default it will not replace the selection with component. So make sure that that is checked. Now it will prompt me if I want to replace it. I'll hit yes. But notice when I click on it, it is its own component. And I'll go ahead and make a copy of that down to here. Do a 2 forward slash. Now that put a copy there. But now, you know what? And I'll just go ahead and select those. Do a copy. And then I will scale those by -1. And then I will move those to the opposite edge, making sure that it snaps, and then I will do a paste in place. So again, I'll review that we just did in class, but repetition is good. So I'll push pull it up 18 inches. And give this a little bit more detail. Slightly different way that I did it in class, but still results in kind of the same thing. I'm not too worried about the textures because I will just paint over them anyway. Grab the offset tool, grab the push-pull tool, and you know what? Let's go to in model textures and slap this this one here. Now, if you ever see a texture and it doesn't quite, you know, if it looks like it's a little bit too detailed and that repetition is a little too easy to pick up on, also remember you can edit it directly to change the size. So I'll go ahead and say, let's make that 5 feet instead. You know, depending on the style that I'm looking for, you know, that might be a little bit more acceptable. Let's do the push-pull or the follow me thing. And whenever you do follow me, you know, sometimes it helps to draw a little helper geometry. So I've got this little kind of ear of a shape just kind of hanging off the edge. And we'll give this a treatment like that. Something to be careful about. Notice how that edge I drew kind of went over the edge just a hair. Just be aware that they may happen. Sometimes it causes problems. So I'll make mine not quite as curved. There we go. Now, I erased a little bit. Oh, yeah, there we don't go. You also got to be careful about which plane you're drawing on. That's not what I wanted to do. Undo. Let's try it one more time. Third time's a charm. Sometimes you need to orbit to get the right view. There we go. Another reason why you want to use a click release click method of drawing instead of click drag release. And I'm also noticing here that for whatever reason I've got a couple extra lines. I don't want those, so I'm going to go ahead and erase those. Alright, so push-pull tool is right here. And the hard way to use it is actively select. You grab the tool, click a surface, and try to essentially walk the dog. And even around this corner, I'm getting kind of caught up here, and it's being weird on me. So I'll hit escape. Much easier to pick a path. I could hold down shift and carefully select this edge, but just try selecting the surface. By selecting a surface, you're defining an edge. Sometimes that's good enough. That's my pre-select. Now I will grab the tool, and I can see down here all it's asking for is a face to extrude. Let's see what happens. Not too bad. Then let's use the eraser tool, clean that up. Oops, too much. There we go. So, yeah, let's go ahead and put some brick on here. I think I used that brick last time. We'll use this one. Oh, and it's not showing up. The reason it's not showing up is because of my face style is set to just shaded. If I turn this on, it should look good. There we go. Not too bad. Now, these other ones are not reflecting that texture because we're in component edit mode. I'm only editing this component. I'm not editing the others. I can't push-pull those, but I can reference them. So that's important to know. If I were to push-pull something else, I could reference this, and let's give it a shot. Draw a new shape, start the push-pull, and notice my cursor is snapping to the geometries on that component that's floating out there. So, good to know. Alright. Oh, you know what? Now's a good time to save. Actually, about 20 minutes ago was a good time to save, but better late than never. Alright. So, on to vegetation. As I mentioned, there's three very common types. There's just straight 3D geometries. And let's take a look at... going to search for 3D tree. You need to be online to do this. This is searching the 3D warehouse, so it's changing all the time. You know, this one looks interesting. Let's try that. The downside to some of these is they're very high polygon. Some of them are. Some are pretty good. This one, judging by the download speed, I'm going to say is a pretty high polygon. Really good for rendering, especially if you want to take this into a photorealistic renderer and you want each leaf to be, you know, cast a shadow and receive a texture. Oh, this looks like bad news. Oh, there we go. Yeah, a very, very high polygon tree. So you can see where this is, how it looks, but if I were to make a couple copies of this, I would not be able to continue this demonstration. So let's go ahead and erase that. The type of tree is called a face me tree. And it's not just vegetation, it really applies to here's a very oh, and something is not right here. Oh, once I place it, it's fine. So notice how this tree faces the camera. Really good to keep your model lightweight. Looks really silly if you export an animation. But really good if you're just exporting still shots. But not so much if you want to do an animation. If you look at it in a top-down mode, then it gets a little screwed up. So let's erase that one. But before I do the 2.5 dimension tree, let me show you how to make a 2D tree. And whenever you make a face component, always keep your red axes in mind. It's very important where your red axis is, because technically that's considered the front of the SketchUp model. And when you specify a component to face me, it faces front of your model first, and then it rotates as you orbit around. Just trust me, if you set it by anything else, it will screwy. So let's do a very basic tree. I've got a shape here, and this will be the ball on a stick method. So there's a very, very basic tree. Erasing those guys. So if I select that, right click, make component, and I will replace selection with component, and also select always face camera. Create, and there we go. One problem here, and I'm going to move this onto my planter. That's a pretty big tree. Is notice as I am rotating, it's facing the camera, but it's rotating around this edge here. And the reason is, by default, your components will always be in the lower left-hand corner, right here. So let's move this over here to fix that. When you create a face me component, you want to set the axes to be on the same. If you forget, it's easy to fix. I'll edit that component. Right click inside of this area here. I can click over here. Actually, I can. So never mind. But right click and select change axes. And it's a 3-click process. If you're not sure what that is to do next, just peek down here. It will show you. So I will click to set the origin, and I just totally missed what I was for, so I'm going to do that again. Click there, set the red, set the green. And here's why you want to be careful. Let me change it again and do it the wrong way. I'll set the red and set the green, and I'll make my blue kind of upside. Let's see if this does this. Oh yeah, so notice the tree is way screwed up because I wasn't being very careful. So, and yeah, now I'm back to with the green and the blue in the right directions. So now that always faces the camera. Let's erase that and use an image. So again, kind of helps to either have some helper geometry or position your camera so the red is right in front of you, because depending on your camera view, that really changes your default location. But it's really a good habit just to use helper geometries when you can. So let's go ahead and import. This time I will do the PNG tree. Actually, you know what? I'll use the JPEG tree, and I'll import this as a texture. I'm doing this a little bit different than I showed you in class, but the end result will be the same. So let's go ahead and place that. Now this is a texture on this shape, so I don't need to explode it like before. But what we'll do is push all these edges around like that, and then I'll erase everything. And let's make this a face me component just like before. This time I'll set the component axes to be right down here at the trunk. Okay, small problem though. Oh, couple small. I did something wrong there. Oh, trying this one more time. Make component. Oh, it's face camera. I accidentally deselected that last time. I'm just too fast. Now hit create. There we go. So it is off in the component or facing the camera, but because it's a JPEG, happens. It does not support transparent backgrounds. To fix this, if you're really got a lot of time, you can edit that component, take your pencil tool, and outline it. Oops. Back up a step here because my computer. Let's pretend I'm being very detailed at outlining this tree, and I can erase these other components or these other edges. So that will give you, you know, a knife that will cast a nice shadow, but it doesn't really work for this situation. So I will go ahead and undo that, and let's go ahead and just erase that tree. My best advice right now is just use something with a transparent background you can create in Photoshop. So this time I'll do it different. I will import that PNG. This time I'll use it as an image. And notice the cursor wants to snap to different geometries. The helper geometry is nice. I'll just use this corner and hide it. So there we go. Now, because I placed that against this surface, it's glued to that surface. And it's also a little hard time trying to select just that tree. There we go. You know what? Let's do this. Let's erase that. And right click on this. Because I erased it, I'm fine. But always check to make sure if a component is glued to a surface, because that will cause you some troubles. Really good for Windows pictures if you always want them to be glued to a surface. For this example, we don't, but there's my tree. We can't make it a component right away because of that weird wrapper, that image, so I will explode it. Double click to select it all again and make component. Set the component axes. Always face camera. Hit create. So good. I need to edit this and hide these edges, which you can either right click, or I'm sorry, shift select each one and then right click and select hide, or alternatively you can grab the eraser tool and hold down the modifier key, which for Windows is shift, and erase it. So this works really well for trees that are kind of just really quick and easy to make. And I'm going to make a copy of that. Oops, not that. Notice how I'm referencing the same corner. Now in class I showed you how to put these inside the component, but I don't want to do it specific reason here. Now they're all a little bit too big. Fix is to edit that component, grab the scale tool, and just go ahead and make these squishy kind of bonsai-ish trees. You know what? I don't like that. Let's undo. Now here's a really good situation. I'd like to possibly hide the of the model and hide the rest of the components. And you know what? I'll keep the model on. Let's go ahead and scale that down. So I wasn't being too careful. Let's just undo and try that. This time I'll scale it before I make the copies. And I'm tapping the modifier each time for this. There we go. Okay, so onto the 0.5 dimension tree. There's a couple of ways to swap. We could right click on the component and go to reload. So I'll show you this one first. And I'm going to navigate to the SketchUp folder. And I'll select the big, now let's do the flowering 2.5D tree. And notice it swapped them all out. So that is do a mass swapping out of components. The other way is to them out with components that are in your model. And to do that, you need the component browser. And you have a component in your model. And that's what that little house, the house is the universal symbol for. This is in my model. There's lots I haven't used. But let's say I want to swap that out with that whole two-dimensional tree that I made previously. Here's a really easy way to do it. In the component browser, you can right-click on any component and go to select instances. And notice in my model, those are now selected. Then you can right-click on another one and select replace selected. So a couple of really nice ways just to about a couple really quick swaps. Now what I'm going to do is import another model. So I need to tell this to be SketchUp. Whoops, and I need to go to the right folder. This time I select this Tom's Desk. That's a really nice one. And I'm just going to sit in my model for the sole purpose of getting it to show up in my models. Now another thing I'm going to do here, this goes for your components, it goes for styles, it goes for your materials. Whenever you add something, even if you delete it, it still is saved in your model. And it can make the model very large and sometimes difficult to work with and a little bit difficult to navigate through. So if you go to your model info, which is underneath window, then go to statistics, you've got an option here to purge unused, and keep an eye on what's happening here when I click that. SketchUp just does a quick, if something isn't being used, it just gets rid of it. So it's good to know about that. Now it's only showing me the three components, which is the horrible tree, the nice one, and the planter we created. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Same steps again, which is to, this time I'll do it a little bit different because I can very easily select the top of these and just grab them in the model. But that can get tricky, especially if you have the elaborate planting plan. You can't navigate in and around your other plants and your other models. So if you can't select them in your view, just right click in the component browser and do select images. No, they're already selected, so I can't pick it here. But they're selected. You can right click on the component that you'd like to replace and select replace selected. So these are very small. I'll go edit that component, grab everything inside of it, grab the scale tool, and a couple things here. I've got to make it larger. Because I'm in the component, I'll want to reposition base manually. Now hopefully these are all still lined up reasonably well. So the line that I will show you in this video is the Randor. So notice that these are all looking exactly the same. The Randor plugin, I can't remember if this is under, it's not underneath the right click. The Randor plugin is somewhere up here. I think it's under plugins. But you'll want to select the components, go to plugins, and it's called BD Randor. And keep an eye on the components. Each just randomly take on a new size. So that works really well. Vegetation works really good for boulders. This particular model's got a lot of extra junk in it, but it's kind of a downside to working with the 3D warehouse. So for example, this little guy here, if I make a of that, that obviously looks very fake. If I select those, go to Randor, now it looks like boulders, sort of. So there you go. That should get you all caught up with everything we covered and then some. And as always, email me if you have any questions.